Hi everyone, in this video we're going to talk about one of the most important basics in Python programming, data types. Now, what exactly is a data type? Think of it like this. When you're working with information in Python, that information can take different forms. Sometimes it's text, sometimes it's numbers, sometimes it's just true or false. The data type tells Python what kind of information it is and what Python can do with it. The 5 basic data types we'll cover today are string, which correlates to text, integer for whole numbers, float for decimal numbers, boolean for true and false, and character for basically single letters, but in Python they're just treated as strings. By the end of this, you'll know how to recognize them, how to use them, and even how to convert between them. Let's start with strings. A string is just text data. Anytime you want Python to store words, sentences, or even a single letter, you use a string. Notice that strings are always surrounded by quotes, either by single quotes or double quotes. They both work the same. So if you want to store a name, a sentence, or even a number that you don't plan to do math with, you should use a string, such as one important thing, even if it looks like a number, if it's inside quotes, it'll still be a string. For example, if I write print and then add in quotation marks 100 and then I add, let's say, another number such as 200, you'll see that the program just ends up writing the two words next to each other because it sees them as just text and not like their numbers. See how Python just sticks them together? That's because strings are for text and not for math. Next up, we have integers. An integer is a whole number, no decimals, just complete numbers. They can have positive, negative, or zero values, such as number 42, or we can do negative values such as -7, or even zeros, like so. So if you're counting things, working with ages, or doing whole number math, integers are the right choice. Unlike strings, integers can be used in calculations. So if I wanted to do a calculation between the numbers that I used beforehand, I can use strings. 100 plus 200, and then that should make 300. Or I can use multiplication, like 10 times 5, which would be equal to 50. So integers are equal to whole numbers and they should have no decimal points. Now, moving on to floats. Floats are so essentially, what if you need numbers with decimals? That's where floats come in. Float is short for floating point number. And it's just Python's way of representing decimal values. So if I wanted to put, let's say, the value of pi, I could write 3.14, which would give me a number with decimal values. Or I could use a negative value, such as -2.5, that would again give me the decimal value. So floats are essentially numbers with a decimal point. For example, if you want to make a division, and it should be resulting in a number with decimal points, you should use floats. So if I wanted to do 5 divided by 2, the resulting would be a float. Floats are really useful when working with things like money, measurements, or percentages, basically anything that isn't a whole number. Now, how do we know which type something is? Python has a built-in function called type to tell us. So if I wanted to determine which type something is, I could just write type and then write data type that I want to know, and Python would give me the result. So in this case, the hello and the parentheses would be equal to a string. Or I could do, let's do an integer type and then 10. This would be equal to an integer. Or if I wanted to do a float, I could do 2.5, which would say float. And sometimes you want to switch between types. This is called typecasting. So if I wanted to, let's assign a value to our number a, let's say 100, but be careful, this is in right now string type. So let's first see what type it is, like so. And then as you can see, Python gives me the answer. And now if I want to switch between the two types, I can just write integer and then a, which would print a to an integer from a string. And then I could write print and then type a to again see which data type a now is, and it would give me integer. So integer with a parentheses essentially makes something an integer, or you could use it in a different type. So we could say b is equal to 2.5. Right now this is a string. And then if I wanted to say b is equal to, let's do a float and a. And now, as you can see, print type, this should be b, print type b. Now it would give me a float because now it is a float. And this essentially turns strings into floats, and you can use any other data type to essentially transfer between the two. Next up are Booleans. Booleans essentially represent truth values. They can only be true or false. So you can use print true, or we can use print false. Booleans are super important in programming because they help us make decisions. For example, if I wanted to determine whether a thing is true, let's do it like 5 is greater than 3, which should give the result of true. Or if I wanted to make something, determine if something is false, I could say, let's say 5 is smaller than 3. It should give the answer of false because this statement is false. So Booleans are essentially equal to true or false values. And here's something cool. Python can also convert other data types into Booleans. 0 is false, but any other number is true. An empty string is false, but any non-empty string is true. So we can demonstrate this by writing print Boolean and a 0. This would give us false. And then we can write print Boolean, let's say 5, which should give the result of true. If I wanted to write an empty string with nothing inside, it would result in false. However, if I included anything within, such as hi, it would give the result of true. Finally, let's mention characters. In some programming languages, characters are their own data type, but in Python, a character is just a string with a length of 1. So for example, if I wanted to just write the letter A, it would just be a string with only 1 letter length. So if you ever see character or char written like this, in Python it is treated as a string. So just to wrap up, strings are essentially text inside quotation marks, integers are whole numbers, floats are numbers with decimals, booleans are true or false sentences, and characters are just strings of length of 1 in Python. Data types are building blocks of Python. They tell the computer what kind of information you're working with, and that determines what you could actually do with it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.